thought we were live the entire time.
Every song is a fucking journey.
This is the worst tour I've ever done.
Anthony Crawford says Gene Simmons is crazy.
Black Album was one of the greatest fucking records of all time.
Dude, that dude is crazy. Rock and roll ain't dead.
Metal was banned.
What was the reason why it was banned?
Politics and religion.
Next record's 3-chord rock. Yeah, we're gonna do an AC/DC record.
When we do the next record take, we need to interview the producer and just make sure that they're not going to invade the Capitol.
I'm going to keep my opinions to myself. Thank you so much! This is why I get banned from tours.
Nobody does anything to get anyone in trouble. Like, no alcohol is consumed on the bus.
Just yoga and prayers.
Jay!
Hey, Joseph, how are you doing, buddy?
Oh my God, you got a plethora of guitars back there.
Oh, yeah, man.
Holy hell. What's going on, man? Did you catch the madness of that Super Bowl halftime?
I have not paid a single iota of attention to any of the NFL games or anything related to them this year.
Not even the Swift Gate?
No, I heard only because I was watching an episode of Colbert that there was some brouhaha over someone dating Taylor Swift in the NFL.
Yeah.
I don't really know anything about it. And then I heard there's like some political conspiracy theory that like Taylor Swift is supposed to be giving a deep state endorsement to Joe Biden at the Super Bowl or some bullshit.
Yeah, she's a psyop, and apparently her boyfriend's team were all slated to win, and even people that don't have any like political bent, don't know anything about football, barely like Taylor Swift or know anything about them, already have this like implanted in their brains that this is all preordained, that it's like a government sponsored soap opera for Taylor Swift and her boyfriend to like get married, announce that they are endorsing Joe Biden after they get their Super Bowl rings.
I mean, you know, what in America isn't a government psyop these days?
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
Clearly, my company is just the CIA sending me overseas to Europe to make beer and convert people to American capitalism or something.
Man, I would take it. I'd take the CIA's money to move to Europe. Didn't you do that?
I mean, that would make my life more interesting.
Yeah. Oh my God.
What are you sipping on tonight, my friend? I see you have a glass of red with you.
This is a I forgot how you pronounce the name of the grape varietal, but well, actually no, it's Sangiovese, but there's like a style. It's that brand. It's the brand Bolo. That's Italian.
Okay.
It's dry. I'm usually like a French right bank Bordeaux guy, but as you can see, I'm not here in my studio. I'm being held ransom in like ISIS headquarters with this lighting.
Yeah, I did see that you're not in your usual studio.
No. It's I don't know where I am. Actually, they handcuffed and tied my my eyes shut. So I don't know where I am.
That's gonna be me all next month, pretty much, because I'm gonna be probably in a different country in Europe almost every week.
Again, you've been traveling a lot since I met you.
Yes. So, I mean, as it stands now and has been for almost a year now, I am not with Adroit Theory anymore. I left them at the beginning of April last year, as they were we were going in, we'll just say, some very different directions, creatively and professionally. And my career trajectory just really was not in line with their new agenda with some of the new people they'd brought on board. And I decided it was better for me to kind of go my own way. I'd been looking for an exit for a while for a variety of reasons, some of which you're already aware of, and some of which no one is aware of. But it was just, it was time. And I debated maybe starting my own brewery, trying to find work at another brewery in Europe because I really enjoyed working in the market. And some colleagues of mine in Finland were interested in having me consult for them because I'd already kind of, without intending to, help them launch an export program. And so when they heard that I was a free agent, they're just like, we can't hire you directly, but we can hire you as an independent consultant. I'm like, okay, we can do that. I'll do that. And so I'm like, what? Maybe I should I already have like branding for myself and everything. Maybe I should just like turn this all into one thing. And it's actually been pretty fun. So now, having my own brand, I've gone and started doing collaborations in the realm of beer and mead. And so, I mean, I know you mentioned my current collaboration on your socials posting. So this is what I've currently got out. This is called Black Metal Beach Party. It is a collaboration between myself and the guys at Interchange Brewing over in Williamsport, Maryland. It's kind of an interesting beer. So they're a very tiki themed brewery. And we wanted to go for kind of a crazy big beer, but something that would still be accessible and be in line with their crowd. And so we went for a pina colada inspired triple IPA. So we used a lot of very like pineapple and coconut forward hops. So it was a lot of Citra, Brew One, Azaka, Sabro. And we used a thiolized yeast to really make all the tropical flavors pop. And then ended up fermenting it on fresh pineapple to kind of really get that flavor in there. And then during the dry hop, we also threw some fresh coconut flakes in there. And so it really, really gave it a nice flavor. It still is 100%, an IPA. It definitively tastes like one, but those fruit notes that you get from the hops really, really pop a lot stronger because of the fermenting and post-fermentation conditioning we did with the various fruits. I think it turned out great, and I'm super, super proud of how that came together and what we ended up doing with that. There is still some available. You can only get it through their brewery. They're like a super local type of place, but they've been friends of mine for years, and so for them to be my
what's the website?
I think they're strictly on social media. I don't think they actually have a website. But if you go, Instagram's the easiest way to get a hold of them. I think it's just at Interchange Brewing.
Interchange Brewing? Yeah. I'll put that in the comments. What would you compare this new beer to?
Well, so, I mean, it definitely tastes like a big hazy triple IPA, but with a lot more kind of fruity character to it. So like a God damn it. Like a Stone, like their citrus one. I haven't really had any of the hazies from Stone. Okay. So it's hard for me to say with confidence, like compared to someone like them. But I mean, some of the closer ones I can think of would be like, I don't know. I really like a lot of the stuff from like Folking Brew. They're out in Groningen in the Netherlands. They make a lot of great stuff. Other half would probably be something that this could be comparable to. They make a lot of hazies that are very popular all over the world. So those are kind of some of the ones that inspired me. I mean, it was weird for all the stuff I designed with Adroit. None of that really came into play. I kind of was like, we wanted to do something really different. And so Lucas and I really sat down and did something very cool, especially doing like the whole thiolized thing. I had to completely relearn how the hazy IPA was done with doing the thiolized yeast, because there are certain grains that have, certain chemical components in their makeup that don't interact well with the thiols when you start getting those, extracting that kind of thing from the hops. And so you don't want to create off flavors. So like we used no wheat whatsoever in this beer. It is all malted barley and oats. And then for our sugars, it's all like maltodextrin and lactose. So it's all corn sugar and milk sugar to do that. And then we did the fruits in there as well, which provided their own sources of sugars.
So is that the malolactic fermentation? Is that what that is?
Kind of. I mean, what's the best way to put this? because I don't know how many beer geeks we have in the crowd. So I'm like trying to like make it as accessible to everyone as possible. But in essence, so like when you're lactose isn't 100% fermentable, and neither is maltodextrin, but it's really those two sugars are designed to kind of give body to the beer, which really helps when you're using a lot of oats. So that it kind of gets you that kind of creamy body to the big hazy IPAs, especially with something like this. It's 10.5%. You want it to have some body to it.
Black Metal Beach Party, 10.5% fruity IPA. Jesus.
Yes.
That's whose idea was the name?
So that one was an interesting one. So Lucas really wanted to do something that was our two kinds of branding that really kind of came together. He's like, I want something that's like metal meets tiki. And a friend of mine who I play in a band with, Tim Regan, has this little project called Black Metal Beach Party, and he had asked me to do a guitar solo for them. And it was for a cover of Soak Up the Sun by Sheryl Crow, but it was like death metal. It was really hilarious. It's one of the goofiest things I've ever done in my career. I think I just ripped off every George Lynch lick that I knew to play that. But I was sitting there at the brewery. We were trying to come up with names, and I'm like, Black Metal Beach Party would be a hilarious name, but I need to call someone and get permission to use it. And so Lucas is like, dude, make that call right now. I love that name. So I called Tim, like right there in the brewery. I'm like, hey, so we're making this beer. Can I steal your music project name for a beer? And he's like, yeah, just make sure I get a can. you can use the name.
Jesus.
Easiest licensing I've ever paid for.
Oh my God. If there's anyone in the audience doesn't know, Jay actually he's who we partnered with to do the Shadows Black IPA, which it went over really well. I believe it completely sold out rather quickly, and it was delicious. I can tell you from experience. And I think Don and I were on a permanent hangover status for about 3 weeks after that weekend.
Yeah, that was a cool beer. It was a very big beer. And it went over very, very well. A lot of people got stoked about it. A lot of people got stoked for, the events and stuff like that. I know when we brought it to Decibel, a lot of people were excited about that. It was so cool to have you guys there pouring with us when we did that. I look back on that collaboration very, very fondly. Just with everything I got to work with you guys, I actually learned a lot in just different approaches to marketing and handling certain things from interacting with you guys. I always try and learn something, whether it's new brewing techniques, new approaches to a marketing concept or whatever, from any collaboration that I do with anybody. I never like it to just be some straight marketing ploy. Like it's always one of those things where I feel like there should be some level of like a meeting of minds or an exchange of ideas to really, make it something special.
Well, thank you. We had a lot of fun hanging out with you guys and filming. Actually, you can go to our YouTube channel and see some of the some of the videos that were the result of those weekend hangouts. How do you say it? Is that Yuri? Is that a friend of yours? Because he seems to be acquainted.
Oh,
with
Yuri. Yes, he's actually if it's who I'm thinking of. Yep, that's Yuri. He's a friend of mine from Finland.
I figured.
He's correct. Hangover tends to be an effect you get from interacting with me. Ask anyone in Finland.
Oh my God.
So yeah. I now spend a lot of time over there because my main business client is in Finland. And I just love going there. So I find the cheapest possible times to fly out there, and I just go hang out in Helsinki and explore craft beer for like a week.
Did the whole political situation over there in Ukraine affect going to Finland at all?
No. The only thing that would potentially affect is kind of the eastern side of Central Europe. So kind of as you start getting more towards like Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, Austria, places that actually border Ukraine. It does kind of affect not necessarily getting into the Baltics, but the level of security and kind of like alertness in the Baltics is definitely ramped up. Finland actually being part of NATO has probably made it even easier to travel there. If truth be told.
It's just the airspace so close to Russia.
Yeah, it is, but I've never had an issue getting in or out of Finland. Although, frankly, if I ever have an issue getting out of Finland, oh no, I guess I'll just have to stay in Finland for a while. Oh, that would be fucking horrible. I have to stay
Yeah.
in Finland.
Yeah.
I think the only person complaining in that situation might be my wife, because she'd be like, "Can you please come home at some point? The dog is driving me nuts."
Oh my God. You'd
Um,
have to start Asylum Brewing over there.
I mean, with the amount of connections I have, if I was there on an asylum visa and could actually work, I could think of a lot of places that would probably want to pick me up outright. It's very hard to get a specialist visa in the EU, so you either have to do stuff as an independent consultant or find another way into the country,
Right.
or into the Schengen region specifically.
Mhm.
So but I'm working on some things. There's a possibility of me maybe picking up a couple extra clients for my portfolio while I'm out there on this trip. I do actually have some cool collaborations coming up that could evolve into some other things. For example, we're actually doing a rebrew of Black Metal Beach Party in Sweden. So Lucas and I are headed over to Karlstad to see our friends at Ten Hands Brewing. And we are doing a double IPA version of this. It'll probably be about like 8.5%. And that's actually due to be presented at the big Mikkeller beer celebration in Copenhagen in May this year. So that's very exciting.
So you mentioned you were going to a bunch of different countries besides Finland and all the other like Nordic states. Where are you going?
Yeah, so to just give you an idea of the itinerary, so I'm starting in Sweden. We're starting in Gothenburg, so my clients and I have business there. We both have collaboration brews with Ten Hands up in Karlstad. Then we've got a couple tap takeovers, one in Karlstad and one in Stockholm. Those are going to be announced more officially pretty shortly. And then we're going to be, at least I am going to be going to Vienna to brew with a small company called Soundgast. We're doing 2 different beers. I'm not sure if I'm quite at liberty to say what they are just now, but we are doing 2 different beers. The recipes are pretty much good to go. And then from there, I'll be headed over to Budapest to visit my friends at Mad Scientist Brewing. I'm not brewing anything with them, but it is their big anniversary party that weekend. So I figured since it was a 2-hour bus ride or whatever from Vienna to Budapest, why the fuck not? It's also really, really, really cheap to stay in Budapest, like even in like nice hotels. So yeah. I'm like, I'll spend a weekend in Budapest and hang out and drink with my friends. Then from there, I'm flying to Finland, and I'm going to be doing a collaboration brew with Panama Utio Tuyo. They're my current clients in Finland. And we're brewing, at least I believe the plan is to brew a West Coast IPA of some kind.
In Finland?
And yeah. Oh, yeah. There's actually a number of breweries that make really killer West Coast style IPAs in Finland. Tuyo is one of them. They do a very good job with that. Olari is another one. They're over in Espoo, which is, they do some out of this world IPAs, especially the West Coast style. I mean, these would blow your mind.
Do I import the hops?
So it depends. I mean, there are some European hop growers that you can get certain things from. Other things do have to be imported from like the US or New Zealand or Australia. So it really just depends. But there are a lot of hop dealers out there that, are well connected enough to be able to get things shipped in quickly and fairly fresh. So Yakima has operations out in Europe and a lot of affiliated partners out in Europe to be able to get stuff out there. Freestyle Hops from New Zealand gets a lot of stuff moved out there. And actually the stuff that's been coming in from Freestyle that I've experienced in the European brews have been just fantastic. My clients at Tuyo did a couple of, it was 3 different single hop IPAs with stuff from Freestyle. So they did, was it Kumpi, Campi, and the Eyes Have Hills. And it was, all those beers were absolutely incredible. We actually brought them out to a couple tap takeovers in Copenhagen and Malmo back in November. And I was there for those, and just absolutely incredible beers all the way through. One of the cool, innovative things that I saw Freestyle doing with their hop pellets and all that was they had a specialty pellet that was a blend of Nelson Sauvin and something else. Was it Rawaka? Raquel, maybe? One of the two. It's called Kohia Nelson. And then they also put dried passion fruit and vitamin C in the hop pellet, which I thought was pretty crazy. So that was a pretty wild take to see, especially in a single hop, that they did that all for the boil and the dry hop and all of that. It was just a really beautiful, beautiful tasting beer.
So can they grow like Northwestern hops, like Cascade? Can they grow those out there?
I'm not sure what all the farm hops in Europe are doing, but I mean, there are some places that are going to have similar climate conditions where presumably you could grow stuff like that. I would imagine some places like Spain or Portugal, you might be able to do that in. I admittedly think that still a lot of stuff is getting sourced from the US, especially because you have guys like Yakima that have all these affiliate partners out there. But I would have to imagine in order to keep costs down, some places have started growing locally.
Right.
I just don't know who or what specifically, because it's pretty much we go through the supplier to get the hops. I don't usually ask where they're coming from, but I mean, I'm sure if I put a little research into it, I could find out.
Right. You just got to make sure that they're not getting Monsanto hops, because then you got to keep rebuying them over and over.
Well, I don't think you'd be able to get anything that's remotely considered GMO, because there's a lot of legislation about that in Europe. So, for example, you can't get thiolized yeasts in Europe, or at least within the EU anyways.
What does that mean?
So a thiolized yeast is a yeast strain that is genetically engineered to boost thiols in beer. And thiols basically provide a hefty amount of very fruity, like almost tropical esters to a beer. So that's kind of the easiest layman's way to explain it without getting into like the super deep chemistry of it all. And honestly, I'm not a professional chemist, so I may not even be the best person to explain all of that. I know what they do for beer, and I know how I like using it in beer and the results that I get out of it. So that's kind of where that goes. Also, Yuri, you are correct. I know Finland does like their beer over there. I just wish it was not so expensive. There are some bars that sell like a can of pale ale. We'll try to sell it to you for 14 euros and 50 cents. And I'm like, no, especially when I know what you're getting it for, because I know who's making it and what they're selling it to you for. Like,
that's like Yankee Stadium prices.
Oh, interesting. So Yuri says there was actually a law in Finland back in the day that a farmer had to grow at least plants of hops. Interesting. So I did not know that.
Is that to prop up the beer production? Is that what that's for?
It's actually a good question. I'm not sure. Yuri, do you know the origin of that law?
Yeah. Because that's why you have a lot of those main crops, the staple crops, where you couldn't have a farm and not have
I mean, and some viable hops will grow in Finland, and there are even like wild hops that you can use in beer. So like I remember having a conversation with my buddy Kleber, who's the owner of Coolhead Brewing. They're out in Helsinki. And he was saying that way back in his home brewing days, he actually was just taking a walk through the woods in Finland, and he found like this grove that had like just wild hops growing in it. And so he came and collected a bunch of them and started brewing a batch of beer with these random wild hops that he found in the woods.
Wow.
Oh, yes, it was to brew beer. Why am I not surprised?
Right.
I mean, what else
have you done any home brewing where you try to make like a random sour, like just purposely do some fucked up shit, see what happens?
In terms of spontaneous fermentation stuff, so not something that I've attempted at home. I don't really do home brewing. I just don't have a lot of space to do it. Thankfully, I can go out to any number of breweries and we can make some cool beer together, which is a nice advantage to being in my line of work.
Right.
However, so I do work with a cidery, I should say a cidery and distillery out here in Virginia called Mount Defiance. And we have tossed around the idea of maybe doing some spontaneous fermentation.
Song title?
What's up?
Is that an Iced Earth song title? Mount Defiance. It
No,
totally-
although it is the name of a Civil War battlefield, because the battlefield itself is right down the street, like from the cidery. So there's the whole what they call the Battle of Middleburg back in the day. When Middleburg's the town where this place is located. One of the main battlefield sites is now a preserved historic park. They couldn't preserve all of it because Route 50 runs directly through it. But it is a thing out there, and I think that's kind of where they took the branding from, because it was like a local historical site. Yeah, that was the thing way before I entered the picture. I've only been with them for about 4 years, and we're actually celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, which is going to be pretty fun. But they're a fun group of guys to work with. But yeah, to answer your question, we have tossed around the idea of maybe trying to do some spontaneous fermentation in there. You just have to be very careful with that sort of thing, because if you start getting like Brettanomyces, which is a type of wild yeast, or you start getting a lot of like lactic acid producing bacteria floating around in your production space, your tanks can get infected. It takes a long, long time to get rid of, and sometimes it never truly goes away. And then suddenly you just end up getting sour everything. So a lot of breweries that do that sort of thing, or wineries, or any other type of space that does that sort of thing, usually either that's all they do, or they have a totally isolated separate facility for those kinds of things. Because all it takes is one careless thing, or spores of yeast or whatever getting onto someone's clothes, and then you've got infected batches of beer everywhere.
Right.
So like a great example is my buddies at Mad Scientist Brewing in Budapest. They have a facility that they call Mad X, and it is attached to their brewery, but it's completely sealed off. You can see it through like a window in the main brew house, but you have to go around outside the brewery into another thing, and you cannot come back into the brewery until you have showered and completely changed clothes after visiting the Mad X facility. Like, you cannot go back in.
I heard that Budweiser has like a clean room. Like, you have to go through a clean room, because it's that huge of a production line, and they probably have to, like, beer like that in the United States is pasteurized and homogenized, isn't it?
Depends on where. Not every brewery pasteurizes their beer. There are pros and cons to doing that. You're going to get rid of a lot of things just in your main boil. But I mean, if you're doing like fruited beers and stuff like that, and you're trying to export them, or you're trying to get them distributed, and you don't have a lot of like cold space, then yeah, pasteurizing might be a good idea. It's expensive to do though. So you would probably want to have a packaging line that has an inline flash pasteurizer for it. Even then, it's not a guarantee that you might, that you won't get re-fermentation. I can't speak to what Budweiser does with their stuff. I've never been to their facility. Maybe one day I should go. I'm generally not a big fan of their beers, so it's not. I don't really pay attention to a ton of what they do, especially because macro on that scale doesn't apply the same way to what a lot of people do on the smaller craft scale.
Sure. Be interesting though. Be interesting to see certain things.
Oh,
like you said,
I agree.
You can learn something from everybody. There's got to be something in the process.
Yeah, I would think so. Who is this Abhorrent Studios getting a hot dog and then going into a scary beach bathroom, because nothing says going to a beach like using a bathroom with wet sand everywhere and an eternally wet toilet seat.
He's been cracking me up this whole conversation, not just because of the Freddy Krueger picture down there. I don't know. The title Black Metal Beach Party did not make me think of a fruity IPA. I was picturing something else. So I'm a little surprised at the...
Were you picturing more of like a stout, or what were you picturing?
I was like, when I think black metal parties, I think Pabst Blue Ribbon. So
Fuck no.
I was picturing like a Kolsch, like something a little off, but still in that like lager realm.
Nope, not even close.
What it tastes like?
So yeah. However, I did do a project with a Kolsch yeast recently, but it's not a beer; it's a cider. And we actually just tapped this at Mount Defiance yesterday, 2 days ago. No, it was yesterday because we had the staff meeting and then we tapped it.
How does it work?
So, how did it work for fermenting that? I mean, it was pretty straightforward. We took our house blend of apple juice. We've been working with a new orchard lately, so we've been trying to find some new stuff to do because the old orchard we were working with, I think, went under, and so we started working with this new company. A lot of their blends are very different from what we were using before, so I think we have to change up a lot of what we've been doing. So we've been experimenting with different yeasts, doing some hop stuff, doing some different flavored ciders. And so this particular one, I kind of selfishly used to prototype a beer idea since I just had stuff available for fermentation to me. So we pitched some yeast nutrient and some K97 yeast. And K97 is the most common German ale yeast that you find in like lighter stuff like Kolsch and whatnot. Usually very crisp, very dry, but it's also a very aggressive yeast. And I did not realize how aggressive it was going to be with the apple juice because we pitched it and we came in the next day and our general manager was pissed because there was just foam everywhere.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it blew the bung and the bubbler off the top of the fermenter. It was because we were just doing it in a little disposable fermenter, just, because we had some extras laying around. It was going to be like a small, like 5-gallon test batch. But we just kind of let it go and do its thing. We let it go for just weeks. And then we hopped it with Strata and Ricau. So like very floral and kind of berry and stone fruit forward hops. And this thing turned out fucking phenomenally. It's like super crisp and dry and has this lovely subtle floral thing going on the nose, but it almost has kind of a juiciness to it from the hops. It is really, really kick-ass. So there's one 5-gallon keg of it on draft at the cidery right now. So if anyone wants that, Mount Defiance Cidery is open noon to 6, Wednesday through Sunday. I encourage you to go try it if you're in Virginia or the surrounding area.
How close to Adroit is that?
So Middleburg they're about 30-ish minutes from Percival, where Adroit's at. So that's, yeah. I mean, it depends on which way you go and how many cops are on the road.
Jesus.
I definitely got popped doing almost 20 over in a 35 once.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You weren't drinking at all.
I was not actually, although I did have a switchblade and a weed pen in the car with me.
Is switchblades illegal?
You're not technically supposed to have them in public.
Oh Jesus. Who is Sauce in Discord?
Oh yeah, okay, I know who Sauce is. So he hangs out a lot in I don't know if you know the band Grave Shadow, but their singer Rax has a Twitch stream. She's a good friend of mine. And he hangs out in her Discord and her Twitch stream a lot.
How do I know that name?
Grave Shadow, they're from I think Bay Area.
Right.
Yuri, thank you for stopping in, buddy. You have a good night, man.
Yeah, that was. What time is it over there in Finland?
In Finland, let's see, they're 7 hours ahead, so it's probably about 4 a.m. or so there.
Oh Jesus! You got to put down the beer bottle. Oh my God! Yeah, I never spent too much time in your neck of the woods. Like it's usually just driving through on tour or, going to Washington or whatever. But it's a really nice part of the country, like that area.
It can be.
It's as far as just how it looks, like, driving through the country. That vineyard that we found was really, really nice.
Yeah, there are a handful of those out there. Virginia has really started to make a bit of a name for itself in terms of location in the American wine industry. Like anywhere else, you have good wineries and you have really shitty wineries, but thankfully we're getting more good ones out here. Fauquier, Loudoun, and Clark County kind of are the bigger wine growing regions up in Northern Virginia. I can't really speak to the rest of the state, but out this way, that's where we find a lot of them.
Let me see here. Jake said that he wishes he could make it, but he's a travel day today.
Yeah, I totally get it. Is he out on tour with someone right now?
No, Jake is not out on tour. He's making his way to LA right now, and then we're gonna get together and work on another Witherfall record.
I'm right there with you in terms of working on stuff right now. I have an EP and a full length I'm working on right now with recently vacated Graves. I start tracking my guitars tomorrow. And I have to have it all done by the end of the month before I leave for Europe. So that way Tim can mix it. And then we've also had an ongoing thing that we've been working on for a full length album for like the past year and a half. And they're two completely different ideas. Tim came up with this idea for this EP while he was on tour with his other band, Eisenmore. And he was like, yeah, what if Elon Musk's SpaceX program caused the zombie apocalypse? Let's write a record about that. Okay. I'm down. It's like, I already have all the songs written. Oh, great. So I don't have to do a bunch of work. I just have to play this. Cool. I'll sight read it off Guitar Pro while I play into Pro Tools, come up with some solos, rewrite your bass parts. And here you go. Thankfully, my job on this one is easy. On the full length, it's a lot more involved. I've been doing a lot more co-writing with Tim. I've been doing a lot more co-production with Tim. I've been kind of supervising a whole thing with like this whole symphonic aspect of it. I have a friend who does orchestral scoring for video games. And so he's doing, I'll give him like an idea of kind of what I want for things. And he'll come up with an entire orchestral score to go inside the song. It's pretty fucking crazy.
And you're doing all the guitars there at your place?
So Tim and I both record our guitar parts at our respective home studios. And then depending on who's mixing, we just send the dry stems to the other person and, you know, come up with the tones and there we go. But yeah, for all that, I'm tracking my parts anyways, right here in my home studio. Tim's tracking stuff at his home studio. And then, our singer Clinton is currently living in North Carolina. So he does all of his vocals down in his place. And then Tim and I, we do some other vocal work, backing vocals and such like that. So we'll record our parts at our own studios as well. Actually, on the one thing I can let slip about the full length is that for the first time ever, it's looking like there will be some level of clean vocals incorporated into RVG's sound, which is something that's never been done before. But we had a part where my buddy Steven, who's been doing all the orchestral scoring, put in this massive sounding choir thing. And I'm like, the lyrics that are going on in this part should be sung, or at least you should have some actual singing of these lyrics blended in with these screams. So I'm like, well, someone's got to do it. So I'll just do it. I mean, I do sing. I've, fronted bands here and there before. So I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. It worked. So, and I didn't have to do a ton of pitch correction on it either, which I was happy about. So, that's kind of how that worked out. So that was I think my first time actually doing clean singing on an album too. So that's
is the band recently vacated Graves?
Yes.
Zombie metal.
Yep, that's us. Yeah, we actually recently celebrated 20 years as a band. I've not been in the band for 20 years, obviously, because that would mean I was like 11 when they formed. Good Lord.
What does the band sound like?
Well, so it is kind of a mix of like old school death metal, black metal, thrash. Initially, Tim's whole concept was he wanted to do everything in standard E tuning to prove that it could still be heavy. And then, of course, a couple records ago, he ended up pulling out 7-string guitars. So it's still in standard tuning. It's just, now there's an extra string. But it has only gotten heavier with some of the down tuning. We actually, for the first time ever on this full length, we're doing a song in drop A on the 7 strings. That was something. It was actually a song I'd written while I was like in college. And then just it sat around and never got used. And I always wanted to do something with it. So I sent it to Tim. I'm like, can we do something with this? And he's like, sure. And so him and I both kind of picked it apart and kept the parts we liked and added new parts. And then we had Steven do his whole orchestral thing. I rewrote the bass parts and probably got overly complicated with them, but I don't care. It was fun.
That's cool. Drop A, man. That you need either a baritone guitar or to have some really thick strings for that one.
Well, I can show you what I'm using for that, actually. So this right here, it's actually a guitar they don't make anymore. It is a Schecter Jeff Loomis model 7-string. It's got a 26.5-inch neck scale on it, so it's just about in baritone range. And then the string setup I use on it is Diodario NYXL. I use a 10 to 52 and then a 70 on the low B. So it definitely, in the tuning for A, that it works just fine. So it definitely gets the job done. It's got a set of Jeff Loomis's signature Seymour Duncan pickups in there. So very nice and clear. And then for the amp tones, I mean, we're doing everything DI. So we've been using a combination of Line 6 Helix Native for all the amplifiers. And then for the cabinets, I really like to use the 2 Notes Wall of Sound. So I've got an immense amount of control over what we sound like and, how clear everything is and what weird effects we put on things, how tight everything can be. So it's kind of, I've got a great guitar to do it with, and then, a great array of control at my fingertips to make it all work.
I've never played those Jeff Loomis models.
Oh, dude, it's a great guitar. I was actually really upset when he went over to Jackson because I've never been a Jackson fan. And yeah, I shouldn't say never been a Jackson fan. I liked some of their earlier stuff. I have found personally that over the last 10 years or so, especially with them being owned by Fender, some of their QC, especially in their mid-range price guitars, I can't speak to their custom shop or anything like that, but in the range of their guitars that an everyday player could afford, the QC really dipped. And I was really unimpressed. There was a lot of cheap hardware. There were, really shitty factory setups. There were electronics issues. You have to remember, I worked for Guitar Center for a number of years as well. And so I would see a lot of these guitars come in brand new with issues.
No, you're 100% right. But that's almost every manufacturer except for the ones that had to catch up, their brand awareness. So they made a lot of player, amateur, prosumer, whatever you want to call it, that price range definitely beats out, a Fender or a Jackson or a Gibson. God help you if you pay any less than $3,000 for a new Gibson. It's going to be trash,
Yeah. I mean, Gibson's another brand that I have mega issues with, and mostly just because people, they're this big iconic brand, right? But most of them don't stay in tune worth a shit. And it's all because of the angle of the headstock, and they're just such fragile instruments. Like Les Pauls will break if you look at them the wrong way. So that's, they're another brand that I've kind of strayed away from. One of the reasons why I really liked Schecter and ESP a lot, which are the two main brands that I play stuff from, is because I could take them out on the road and I could literally throw them around, smash them into cymbals, throw them through an amplifier grill or whatever, and still pick them up and play them, and they just have a few paint chips. When I was touring with Hatefuck back in the day, one of the 8 strings behind me, over here, I literally, the headstock was all smashed and dented up, and there were big chunks taken out of the neck because of me just getting super aggressive with it. And all I had to do was have my tech fill it with some super glue and some wood putty, varnish over it real quick, and it was right as rain. I mean, there was all my blood, other people's blood all over this guitar in the pickup cavities and all that. And we just yanked everything out, cleaned it up, and good to go.
Jesus. I can tell you something that there's certain trade-offs. It's there are singers out there that they're not in tune either, but that tone you can't replicate. And that's how I feel about those Gibsons. It's use them in the studio and tune them up when they need to be tuned up. I mean, most guitars in the studio, intonation, you have to tune the guitar for every particular part. You're not just tuning up the open strings and then letting it fly. So I don't know, man. Like if you got, I feel like a lot of those like expensive guitars, the people that are bringing them on the road have people that are taking care of them for them, and they have the money if they lose one, it doesn't matter.
With some of them, certainly. And you've seen a lot of advancements in guitar hardware lately too that also help with that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So Evertune is one of the brands that comes to mind. They make bridge systems that, I mean, you basically you put one of those on your guitar and it is basically lockstep in tune, and you can even set it so that way even if you bend the string, the intonation does not change. Like the pitch won't change at all. So it's pretty wild from that perspective that they've got these kinds of devices out there that work as well as they do for guitars. One
I
thing
think
that I kind of have to
it's not a guitar anymore when you do that. Like the there's no way that all the overtones are the same if there's something doing something behind the scenes. There's no way. Like not that it's makes it less than, but it's not the same. It's not the same instrument.
Well, it definitely does do some differences because with stuff like that, you do have a fair amount of mechanical components that can introduce different overtones. Now, you are also introducing usually a high mass quantity of metal into things with these bigger bridges. So that also has something to do with it. So it would almost be like, you've played with a lot of guitar players that use like Kahler tremolos and Floyd Rose tremolos. So with the Floyds, you have the sustain blocks. A lot of people like titanium or stainless steel or brass for those, and that can ultimately affect your tone, and especially the level of sustain and the types of overtones you get. You have coated springs now to eliminate spring noise that you would get originally from those. Or with the Kahlers, you have all totally stainless steel or solid brass bridges. At least the last time I looked at their stuff, that's what they were offering. So, I mean, I think a lot of people also kind of look into, well, if I'm going to be putting this massive thing, this device in my guitar, what am I going to be, what kind of tonal enhancements can I get out of it?
Mhm. I don't even mean from the I'm not talking about the tone production from the mass or the material itself. I just mean like when you play any sort of acoustic instrument, especially a stringed instrument, like when you strike it or however like the note is produced, like you get a certain overtone series that happens from the string vibrating. And if there's something else controlling the way that string vibrates or the length of the string, depending on what's happening, like the Evertune does, it's going to do something that's unnatural. Like it's going to introduce something that makes this thing not really a guitar. Like, do you see what I'm saying?
I kind of get where you're coming from in a
It's not,
way.
isn't it?
Like,
It's like the way
no,
that
go
it
on.
works is it's sensing and then responding, right? Like there's some sort of algorithmic thing in there that senses something's off and then it does a certain action. So like you've got this other thing that's now introduced and that will affect the way that the harmonic series is replicated.
Yes, I mean when you have something that is designed to introduce total tuning stability like the Evertune. So like it's not digital, it's totally mechanical, but
Yeah.
it does have an effect on as you said, your wavelengths and your harmonic series and all that.
Yeah.
Um
While you're
do I think
playing.
that yeah. I mean, do I think that makes it any less of a guitar? I mean, the world of electric guitar is such a vast, crazy thing and has evolved both so little and so much depending on who you're looking at as time has gone on.
Mhm.
So would I say that makes it any less of a guitar? No, I think it is, again, like anything else, it's a device to suit your needs as a player. Just like
Sure.
your preference in your pickups or any other hardware. So like, you have the idea of like standard tuners versus locking tuners. I like locking tuners on all my guitars because it means I don't have to wind the strings. No other reason.
Yeah.
So again, I think it comes down to personal preference. Um, I have found that the Evertunes are kind of a pain in the ass to maintain, and they certainly jack up the price of an instrument. So, I mean, I have hardtails on most of my guitars, and then for anything with the tremolo, I usually have something that's double locking. I've not been very happy with the Floyd Rose systems lately, so I actually have an Ibanez coming in with an Edge zero resistance system on it. We're gonna see how well that holds up. Herman Lee seemed to have some great things to say about them in his demo of that versus the Floyd versus some other tremolo systems out there. It seemed like the ZPS actually held up better, especially when giving it the tremolo a lot of abuse when raising pitch compared to a lot of the other systems.
Who makes that system?
That's Ibanez, so it's exclusive to their guitars. So the 0 point system is what goes into their kind of zero resistance tremolo, and they also have it available as an install for their other Edge bridges and whatnot. So I bought this Iron Label Xiphos from Sweetwater. It took forever for the damn thing to come in. I'm still waiting on the new tremolo system pieces to come in. And so basically it has a set of counter springs to go with the main springs. And so it's designed to force the tremolo system to immediately return to a neutral position and, stay in tune every time you use it. Because with a lot of the floating systems, when you're going down or going up, and especially pulling up on them with the full floating systems, they won't return to like a totally neutral position and your tuning will be off.
Yeah, I had an old Randy Rhoads copy with a Kaler on it, and you literally had to use your ears to kind of nudge the thing back to zero, like if that makes any sense. Like you could tell.
I had a
I
had a BC Rich Kerry King model that had a similar thing. It had a Kaler on it. It was a 7-string, and it was a complete pain in the ass.
Yes, dude, 7 strings. 7 strings with any sort of Floyd Rose or Kaler are a bitch. I mean, Jake has his main guitar is a Jackson King V custom with a Kaler that he doesn't even use it. It's just blocked off. There's probably like a decaying battery inside the fucking body cavity.
Well, actually, with the Kalers for blocking them, they have what's called a hybrid series. He may have that on his, I don't know, but there's just a little hex screw that you turn and it locks the bridge in place.
I don't know, man. I didn't see anything, but it might be. How
It's
long?
Really small. So if you look at his guitar, what you'll want to look for in kind of the back center of the bridge, like if you hold the guitar flush and look towards the back of the bridge where the fine tuners are, right at the base plate, you'll see like a little tiny hex screw. And that is what locks the bridge together.
I didn't see it. And Jake will be the first one to tell you that you don't want anything he has to adjust on the thing.
That's fair.
Yeah,
I totally get that. I hate doing my own guitar maintenance. I used to do it all the time, and now it's just like, well, I don't like tour or anything like that anymore. So if I need something done, I've got a tech that lives an hour away from me that's a friend of mine. I'll take it to him.
Yeah. I mean, that's a luxury for sure, not having to do your own guitar work.
Oh, it absolutely is. Like now that I don't have to, like I don't like to. Outside of changing my own strings, I will not let anyone do that. Sorry, I'm not an amateur. I can change my own fucking guitar strings. But like I hate having to go and do setups and stuff like that. It's just a pain in the dick. I got to get all my tools out. I got to lay it out and crank this and adjust that. Like, man,
another
I run a business. I run a live stream. I work several other jobs. I don't have time to sit around and set up guitars.
So they mentioned Discord. So what's your Discord?
So my Discord is called the Barcade. So it's you know I've got my live stream on Twitch, and it's all centered around metal music and craft beer and gaming. And so I thought that was a fitting name for it. But you can find it on Discord if you search it and ask to be invited in or whatever. People can join that and keep up with me there, or they can follow me on Instagram. It's another easy one, just at Slaughter Brew on Instagram. Or if you look me up on Twitch, I'm also Slaughter Brew on Twitch. So easy enough to find my live stream there. I don't stream as much as I used to because I'm traveling a lot and don't always have reliable internet to do that sort of thing. But I do always like to, start all my streams with a beer review, no matter what type of content we're doing. And kind of have a featured brewery or, beer for the day, that, I'm kind of sipping on and talking about, as we're doing whatever throughout the stream. Sometimes I'll do like reaction stuff, and I'll try and do beer related or cocktail related stuff for that, being on both sides of that industry. So it just kind of, depends on what I'm feeling that day. But always try and keep it, beer related to some extent. So if you're into the beer content, into the metal content, if you like gaming, if you like, crazy cocktail content or anything like that, my stream might be something you want to check out.
Yeah, and there's a link to your Instagram on the post itself, and then when we're done here, we'll put it on the description in YouTube. I wanted to ask you, have you ever been down into like southern Spain, Andalusia? Have you had any of the Sidra?
I have not been down to that part of Western Europe ever. I would like to at some point. It just has not been on my immediate agenda. We'll see. Who knows where my travels could lead me. Right now, a lot of my stuff has been kind of focused in like the Nordics and the Netherlands, Belgium, the UK, and now it's looking like potentially Austria and Hungary as well. So we're going to see how certain things, continue to pan out. The Baltics is another area that I'd like to expand a little more into in terms of both my clients' reach and my own personal reach. I have a lot of connections down there, but I know there's a lot changing in the Baltic brewing scene, especially in Estonia right now. So, I'm privy to some information that's going on out that way. I can't really talk about at the moment because it's not public knowledge. But there are definitely some things going on in the Estonian beer scene that are it's just kind of unfortunate and a natural part of the world of business. But it's some changes going on that I've seen over the past year that are a little disheartening for sure.
Well, since you can't talk about it.
Yeah, I can't really say much more than that. I would really love to, be able to expand more into the Baltic scene. I just kind of have to. It's a little bit of a playing your cards right and a little bit of a waiting game with some things.
Right.
But we'll see, because with Fallout also comes chances for new opportunities. So who knows? I may be able to make the best of a weird situation somewhere and maybe help a place get back on their feet or help people put a new thing together entirely. I have no idea what that could lead into, but I'm kind of trying to see what opportunities may be in that particular country for me coming up down the line, probably over the next year here, because I would personally love to expand a little more into there. And I love Estonia as a country. Tallinn's a great city to hang out in particular. And they have such a massive and very heavy beer scene there. So it's just kind of crazy to me seeing some of the changes that I've been seeing. But I think it's also kind of an example of how the craft beer market internationally as a whole is kind of doing. I mean, craft beer sales kind of continue to drop more or less. You're seeing a lot of creative stagnation in the industry. It's everything these days seems to be like, hazy IPAs with lactose and smoothie sours and, milkshake pastry stouts. And it's like, and then like the occasional lager. And it's like, what is going on here? Like, and it's been this way for almost like half a decade or so. At least that's where I've really started to notice it. And it just kind of feels like it's stagnated and everyone just wants the same hype hops and the same like 4 fruits and the same, chocolate, coffee, hazelnut, whatever ingredients in their stouts. And like, it's like, why does everyone suddenly have the palate of a 5-year-old?
It seems like it bifurcated to me, like almost like politics in America. It's like you either drink, plain like white as fucking paper Budweiser, or you drink the most outlandish, fucked up shit like craft thing. Like there's no there's no it's like there's no middle ground anymore. Like you'll go to like at least like out where we are, in some of the bigger cities, LA, Vegas, wherever. And if it's like a craft type of place or like a microbrew, almost everything on there is completely undrinkable unless you're like out for an adventure. Or you go into a regular bar and all they have is Miller Lite and fucking Budweiser. And there's it just seems like the market's split completely in half. No one's trying to make something for everyone, or at least even 20% of the population anymore.
In a way, it has. I mean, individual preference still exists, for the everyday beer drinker. But you see a lot of hype. And one of the things that I think contributes in a very negative way to this hype is an app called Untapped. Have you heard of this app?
Yes. Yeah. I had it for a minute.
Yeah. Let me tell you something about Untapped and how it affects the beer industry.
All right.
On Untapped, unless you have a super hype, outrageous beer, first off, very few people are actually going to be inclined to rate it well. So unless you have, the next Citra Mosaic Galaxy Hazy Double IPA with lactose, or you have the next, raspberry mango smoothie sour at, 8.6% or whatever. Of course, now ABV's popularity is going down, so people want lower ABV stuff, or they want non-alcoholic beer. That's the other big thing that we're starting to see. Or they, they want, you to have like a big barrel-aged stout with, hazelnuts and cocoa nibs and coffee beans and vanilla paste or whatever the fuck. So, and, don't get me wrong, every beer has its place, right? I'm not saying these beers shouldn't exist. I'm not saying people shouldn't like these beers. To me, a lot of that stuff, it almost barely qualifies as beer. The IPAs, maybe not so much. Like, I mean, an IPA is an IPA is an IPA, and there are a lot of great IPAs, and IPAs are a great way to explore hops in particular. So I really like them as exploratory beers to really get an idea of hop flavors. But digressing. Sorry, I do that a lot. But so anyways, these hype styles, right? They're going to be the ones that get, the big, 4+ star ratings for the most part. And then anything else that is not that, people are just like, oh, well, it's not the big special hype popular beer. I can only rate this like, 2.8 to like 3.7 stars. I'm not gonna, give this like a solid 4 or a 5, even if it's a great beer. So like Pilsner Urquell, it's one of the greatest light beers ever made, right? It is a classic Czech Pilsner. That beer, I think, has like a 3-something rating on Untapped.
Come on.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. And that goes for a lot of other classic great beers that are like 2.5 on Untapped. And then you have individual beer drinking cultures and how they use that app. Finland is a great example of how an entire culture, and how they will rate like beers or other products will shoot their own market in the foot. So first off, a lot of these beer drinkers will act surprised that a Finnish brewery made anything good. It's like, oh, it came from Finland. It must only be okay. And then they'll drink it and they'll leave reviews like, best beer I've had all month, incredible flavor, would buy again, 2.5 stars.
Yeah.
And in the Baltics, it's even worse. I'm actually mildly convinced that some people in the Latvian beer scene are just looking for reasons to hate what they're drinking. Because some of the beer reviews I've seen from like Latvian beer drinkers are just like, well, it's a beer and it's only okay because it's a beer. 1 star.
I mean, that shit's everywhere. It's like people rating Metallica as like mid. It's like, what? Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, Metallica as a band has had their ups and downs. I don't know if I can really compare Metallica to beer, though.
I mean,
though Metallica's had a lot of like changes in style over that. So I guess you could compare Metallica to beer in a way.
What I'm saying is, as let's just say Metallica as one thing, like Metallica, right? Like they they're the standard bearers for metal. Like, they are metal. They are the Bud Light. They are the fucking Coca-Cola, right? Like,
These days, yeah.
well, you know what I mean. Like, they're the only reason that all the other copies exist. Like, there is no fucking like metal scene, metal bands, like, you know, fucking Sirius XM with 3 metal channels. That doesn't happen without Metallica being that fucking popular. Like, it just doesn't. And it's like,
No, for sure.
you know, like, then someone comes along and they have taste in dwarf metal, and nothing that's not dwarf metal gets a 5 while they rate Metallica a 2. And it's like, what the fuck kind of world are you living in?
Yeah, and I don't get that. For me, like, when I go in, and I don't know, maybe I'm just cut from a different cloth than average people. Who the fuck knows? I'm not trying to say I'm anything special, but, like, you know, I'm kind of with Internationally Insane over here.
Yep.
And, you know, he's like, you know, if it's a good beer, I'd rate it 10 out of 10. Same for bourbon, you know, whatever the case might be. For me, I mean, I'm going to try and rate things objectively. Like, I look at, you know, what are the flavors coming through here? Do I expect a beer in this stylistic category to even remotely taste like what I'm drinking? You know, am I detecting off flavors? You know, how do I personally like the beer? Objectively, does this seem like a well-made product? And all those factors will go into some things. So yeah, if I think something is really outstanding, I can't find any flaws with it, I personally really enjoy it, sure, I'm going to give it 5 stars on Untapped. If I think it's really, really well made, maybe it's not, you know, the most mind-blowing thing I've ever had, but it's still really solid, can't find anything wrong with it, you know, I would probably give it like a 4-ish range. If it's just, you know, average kind of beer to me, it probably would get something in the 3s. If I flat out don't like it, and, like, I think that there's potentially a problem, then you're going to start getting into 1 to 2 star territory. And I've had a couple that have just been so awful that they've been rated like a 0.25. It's only been a couple times, but I have done that. And that is reserved for something that is just like truly awful. Like, I expect better from your brewery. You know, you basically released a fucked up beer instead of pouring this down the drain when you realized it was bad.
You know, and I'll bet that it still gets a cult following just because it's different and weird.
Potentially. I mean, I try not to put too much stock in, you know, Untapped ratings for beer, because I know that a lot of it is just hype and bullshit. But the problem that you run into in the industry is that unless your beer, for the most part, like, if it's not a 4 or above, distributors don't want it.
Right.
Some consumers don't want it. Importers don't want it. I remember when I was working at Adroit Theory, we were getting ready to send a shipment of beer out to our importer in the Netherlands, who brought all the stuff all over Europe, right? And they had put in an order for a bunch of beers, and one of them was a West Coast IPA that we made. It was a really nice West Coast IPA. And we got an early review that basically was literally like, I don't like IPAs, 1 star. And it brought the overall score down from like a 4.1 to like a 3.8 or a 3.9. And they sent us an email and they're like, yeah, so we don't want this beer anymore because it's not 4 stars on Untapped.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's like that South Park episode about Yelp. It's like,
yeah,
not everyone should have an equal say. Like,
Untapped is basically fucking Yelp for craft beer, if I have to be completely honest.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, so it was designed to be a useful tool for beer drinkers and a social experience for beer drinkers, right? But a lot of people just, they put no thought into their reviews. They're just, you know, sometimes they don't even leave one. So it's like a brewery can't take feedback from, you know, something that's just, I don't like IPAs, or I don't like this beer, or no comments at all. Like,
right.
You know, and then, you know, ultimately you end up hurting a brand that you might actually like by tanking them without even leaving a reason for it. Or, you know, and I don't think people realize, like, on the inside of the industry, how close, you know, or how important the Untapped scores are, which is ridiculous to me. Like, I cannot believe that a single app basically dictates what people will or will not bring in. So like it has actually made it difficult for me to move my Finnish client because especially just because of the way Finns will rate beer, like best beer I've ever had, 2 stars. Like, so their average score on Untapped is like 3.6, and they make some of the best fucking beer you can get in the world.
Yeah. I mean, those phones are a double-edged sword, man. Like, it's easier to sell to people, but it's also easier for shit like that to happen. You know, like, imagine if let's say like a metal band had like a crazy fan base and they got into a beef with Drake. And so all these fans that like metal never like would ever listen to Drake, but then they went on Amazon and said they bought Drake and rated it 1 star. You know what I mean? It's like what.
And I'm sure that happens between breweries on Untapped. I'm sure there has to be instances of that.
Allowed to why do you get a say? You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Because the court of public opinion is overly important these days.
Jesus Christ.
It has been since 2016. I'm
not even going to dive into that.
I don't want to either, but it is what I've noticed. Right around 2016, it was, the court of public opinion is everything, and you must, surrender every aspect of your personal life to be judged on the internet, or otherwise people think you're shady and you're hiding something, and we want to know if you should be canceled or not. Like, it thankfully, it's kind of died down, a lot of the brouhaha around that has kind of died down a lot, but like, right around that time is when it really started to get bad. And then it was like really bad for a while. And then the pandemic, I think, made a lot of it worse. And now I think people have finally started to like have something resembling a life again. So unless you go to like the far off corners of Twitter or X or whatever the fuck we're supposed to call it now, you don't really see as much of that anymore, unless you're in like cliquey local metal scenes that have too many hardcore kids in them on Facebook.
I think people finally are realizing that they're standing in a circle when they're firing off all these cancellation notices. It's like,
I think so. And it's like, I mean, I get it. I'm not going to tell anyone, what to spend their money on or not spend their money on, or that they should or shouldn't support anything. If you don't want to support something and you have a problem with it, sure, don't support it and voice your grievances about it. You have that right. And I fully support your right to do that. But I do think that, the hype and popularity that being outraged against, a person or a group of people does get crazy out of hand sometimes. And I also don't think people realize how that affects not just the lives of people that they target or, organizations that they target or whatever. And, by all means, if you want to boycott something, organize a boycott. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying, do think about, when you go around making ad hominem attacks on people, how that affects people's lives. And also not just their lives, but it does create a sense of paranoia around everyone that witnesses that, because it's like, okay, are they, is the mob going to come for me next for some perceived slight? So that I think is, another kind of whole issue. And it's not something I really like to touch on, because again, I do think that people have their right to express themselves and to be heard. And that's why, that's the great and terrible thing, the double-edged sword of social media platforms. You have a platform, you can be heard, and you probably will be heard. But you should think about the consequences of your actions in the greater span of the public. People like to talk about the greater good all the time, but I don't think they actually think about it.
No, because the greater good for them is what the greater good is. It's not the greater good. It's like what they think that the greater good is. And then they try to, extrapolate outwards instead of like, the greater good as this other thing. It has to do with how they see what should be happening in the world.
Yeah. It becomes personal perspective at that point.
Yeah. Like a greater good for a fundamentalist Christian is not the greater good for what you and I might consider.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I mean, that's the whole political thing. The right and left is there's like a completely, how they see getting to the great. Everyone wants a great economy and fucking peace and jobs for everyone, but You know, there's a big fucking division as to how to get there.
Well, none of these people have a goddamn decent idea of how to actually get there either. Like, the way that like that gets done in America, and I'm not a political or economic expert by any means, but I can tell you that America is a lot of narrow-minded people listening to a lot of media propaganda and bullshit and like corporately sponsored opinion pieces is what it seems like to me. You get a lot less of that in other parts of the world. Now, that's not to say that, you know, other people's media and whatnot is not affected in similar ways, because that does happen everywhere globally. But, and I mean, you have political issues and political division everywhere in the world, but it is not as bad in some other places as it is in the States. Unfortunately, though, we are starting to see the rise of both far right and far left extremes all over the globe. And in Europe, it's getting really nasty right now. Like,
I heard about
there's
what's going
literal
on.
neo-Nazis in Finland's government right now. I know Italy, Sweden, and Hungary all have these very far right figures heading their government at the moment. Hungary's is particularly kind of like not great. What's his name? Orban. I've yet to meet a single Hungarian that actually likes the guy, and it really makes me wonder how he manages to stay in power.
Yeah, you could probably guess.
Netherlands also does have a similar thing going on. That is right. They've had a bit of a right-wing rise lately. So you are right about that, Will. And I know that it has also meant some serious strains on their healthcare system, apparently. The UK also has a lot of very far right controlled stuff, and they seem to be just intentionally trying to dismantle their country, so that way by the time the next person comes in, there's nothing they can do. And I've seen firsthand how awful things are for average working class people in the UK. It's not pretty. It's not pretty over there, and I really feel bad for the entirety of the UK, because their healthcare, their basic transportation, their workers' rights, a lot of these things are just being fucking throttled by their current government.
Yeah. We think we know these types of problems here in the United States. Like, you know, someone like me who's like, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. So like when the whole thing with Biden came down, I'm not a Biden fan, but then I see him passing, you know, reform and helping out the unions, like that new rule that he put through with an executive order. I don't know if you saw that. That if any corporation was found to have interfered with organization efforts, that they didn't have to take a vote; they were automatically considered unionized. Like, you should, that's to me, that's progress. But
I would say that is progress, and I'm actually surprised to see that from him, because Biden to me has come off as basically a corporate flesh puppet, a bit of a husk. Like, I mean, most of the DNC is very corporate, just like the RNC is. Like, it's two sides of the same coin. It's corporate money everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why that's what I mean, though. So like in other countries, you don't even get that. You don't even, like, because, you know, you get the Democratic lip service to the working poor over here, and then once in a while you'll get a token, you know. Like, there'll be just enough political pressure, but at least you get the token. In other countries, you don't get the token. Like, you get oppression, like real oppression. Like, what we don't really see real oppression here in the United States. You know, we like to give.
Well, and in other countries, you also do get actual, you know, boons and, you know, laws passed in favor of workers and stuff like that. A lot of the Nordic countries come to mind for that. A lot of other places in Europe up until recently come to mind for that. And I think a lot of that, though, comes down to the fact that they have more than just, you know, a left wing and right wing party. It's not a two-party system in a lot of these places. They have multiple parties in their parliament or Congress or whatever the case might be. And, you know, they have, you know, different levels of voting for, local, state, federal, etc. And in some places, like legal residents are actually allowed to have some level of say in politics, be it just local elections or provincial elections or whatever. It's usually not on a national or international like EU scale, but like, like Finland comes to mind in particular. Like, as long as you have residency in the country, you're usually allowed to vote in like local elections. And then if your residence permit, like you've been established for, X amount of years, you can vote in certain other elections. And then when you gain full citizenship, you can vote in like all the elections. So,
Sure.
I think they actually have a pretty good way of doing things. Although how this crazy far right party that they currently have now with these weird neo-Nazis got into power, I'm not quite sure. Thankfully, it seems like most of the country is actually fighting back, because I think this party promised them like, oh, we're going to try and do some more reform stuff. We're going to try and go a little more central. We're going to try and deal with the EU immigration crisis, blah, blah, blah. And then they just ended up stripping public benefits from all the poor that voted for them.
Yeah, well, there really is there's no real power unless you're willing to bring out the guillotines. I mean, people forget that, like all this voting nonsense. It's like, look at America. Look at American elections. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like you said, there's no real difference. There's slight differences, but the results are always the same. They tell you they're different, but there's not much, unless you're like a one issue voter, like on abortion or something, right?
Yeah, no, and I agree with you there. And the other thing too that kind of comes into play is, again, I'm not really sure the will of the people actually decides an election. I think money does. I laughed so hard when the Trump supporters were like, "Oh, they stole the election from us," because it's like, dude, you haven't. No one's been actually winning or losing elections. People are just buying them. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus, man, like, go look at all the lobbying that happens. If that doesn't tell you what the fuck's going on, like, and it's been this way since the beginning of time, like, or since the beginning of the country. Like, our, kind of the whole founding fathers thing was basically, it was a bunch of wealthy landowners. If you weren't a white male with land, you couldn't vote anyways. So it's like,
that's been replaced by the system in Washington. The, what do you call it? Lobbying. That's basically being a landowner, a wealthy landowner. You're just, now that's the criteria. Like, they make you believe that you're wealthy and you own a house, but you don't have any power.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of the same thing with like how we replace the institution of slavery with the institution of the prison industrial complex. It's the same shit.
Or wage slavery. If you have to work 40 to 60 hours a week and you can't do anything with the capital, right? Like, but put a roof over your head and food in your mouth, then that's basically slavery. I mean, like, I don't want to fall into the trap of pissing off liberals by comparing the two. But I mean, if all you're doing is trading your life for the means of sustenance, that's slavery. Like, that's all you're doing.
You're not living, you're surviving. Like,
yeah.
And I think there are liberals that would agree with you that wage slavery is absolutely a thing.
Sure.
And especially in America. But, there are also plenty of people that just, they want to run around and say, look how pink my hair is and look how virtuous I am, and I'm going to scream about something on other people's behalf who don't even know I exist, because they have nothing better to do with their time. And that's called Twitter.
It's hilarious, because that's what they want. They want everyone like fighting over these social issues and ignoring all the economic ones. And it's like, that's what they did to MLK. No one wants to fucking realize like that as soon as MLK stopped talking about race and started talking about economic opportunities, that's when they shot him. Like, we can sit here and argue about, they, them, he, she, like whatever, like Trump, like grabbed a pussy, all that shit. We can argue about it forever, and they're gonna be perfectly happy until we start talking about the rate of inflation versus the rate of wage increases. that's when they fucking will start clamping down on you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, if we keep having this conversation, we're both probably going to be shot tomorrow.
We're gonna be turned into Lenin. We're gonna be in the UK. We'll be exiled. Jesus. Well, does anyone else have any questions for Jay here? Because we're gonna wrap this up. This is almost our longest episode.
Yeah, about to say we totally diverted from beer and just went into the state of the world.
Black People Beach Party. You know, that's what happens though. This is a natural progression for an alcohol related show, because you start getting into politics and religion.
I mean, I guess so. Oh, we do have a question. So what is the best guitar? It's all personal preference. I can't judge what you like because I don't know enough to relate to the reasoning of preference. So we all need to be open-minded. Wipe direction towards or away from the sack.
Well, let's answer the first question. We'll answer that second one after.
So, I mean, I think I agree. The best guitar is definitely going to be all personal preference. What's best for me and what feels best in my hands or Joseph's hands or Jake's hands is going to be, potentially totally different for somebody else. I have a number of guitars that I absolutely love. And it's really hard for me to personally pick a favorite, but I also know that what I absolutely love is going to be different for somebody else. My personal favorites that I'm rocking right now, definitely my Schecter JL7 that I pulled out earlier. I really like my Schecter Banshee Elite 8-string. I used that actually on the last RVG record just because I really liked how it sounded. It's got a nice swamp ash body, some really cool custom pickups with beryllium magnets in them, and it's ebony fingerboard, stainless steel frets. It feels great in my hands, even though it's got a big 28-inch neck scale on it. Like, just feels good. I guess if you want to say personal preference, especially best feeling guitar, I'd say almost anything that's got a reasonably playable neck shape and an ebony fingerboard and stainless steel frets. It feels like silk under my hands.
Nice. My favorite guitar that I've ever owned was a mid 90s Jackson Kelly.
Nice.
Yeah, reverse shark fins, ebony fingerboard, fucking unbelievable. Quilted maple on top.
Yeah, probably a pre-Fender.
Absolutely. This guitar was about $1,000 and then back in 96. So imagine the quality,
Yeah, it was probably a great type of thing. I don't know if Will's question is for me or for both of us. I follow the Japanese?
Aberrant Studios.
Oh, cool. I don't personally follow much of the Japanese rock scene. There are some Japanese metal bands that I enjoy and sometimes, pay some level of attention to. Galnerius comes to mind. I really like them. And then there was this other band that I came across a little while back, and I can't remember their name for the life of me right at this second, probably because I'm a few beers into the evening, but it's Wagaki Band, that's what they're called. And they're kind of like a fusion of like Japanese folk music and like very like 80s guitar rock, like Satriani and stuff like that, and like J-pop. And they, I think, are very cool. They're doing something very different, and their live concert events that I get a chance to see videos from on YouTube are really insane. So definitely things I really like. Also, on the Galnerius thing, Sio from, I think that's how you pronounce his name anyways. He's their guitar player. He has a solo project now that he's been doing that also I thought was just really, really excellent. And a much harder hitting songwriting that I'm used to hearing from Galnerius as a band. So that I also really, really liked.
I met the Galnerius guys at Prague Power, I believe it was last year. They were super cool. Actually, that was right before I went up to see you. No, it wasn't. It was the year after. God damn. See how this shit blends together?
Yeah, time flies.
God damn it. Because we went to see you up at Decibel Festival right after Prague Power. We had played Prague Power, drove up there. Yeah, definitely cool band. And yeah, that guitar player is really, really good.
Yeah, he's a monster. I remember when I first discovered them, it was so probably to surprise to no one, I'm a huge fan of Finnish power metal bands. And back in their earlier days, I was a big fan of Sonata Arctica.
Yeah.
And they had some, because they're huge in Japan. So one of the Japanese guitar magazines like did like a video shoot with Yanni from Sonata Arctica, and it was Young Guitar. So you've seen the video I'm talking about. Sio from Gunarius and Yanni from Sonata Arctica, where they did that, and that was kind of a cool video. I miss Yanni and Sonata Arctica. Elias is a great fucking player, but their music definitely changed a lot after Yanni got fired. With that said, we now have Yanni in playing with Insomnium, and what he's been doing with them over the last couple of records has been fucking phenomenal.
Definitely. If there's any more questions, we'll be here for another minute. If not, Jay, I got to tell you, this whole conversation, I've been thinking, I'm like, you could totally do a spoof for Seth MacFarlane, like his voice. You could totally do a Seth MacFarlane spoof. Like there's certain inflections like that you sound exactly like him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never really considered that.
Listen back to your voice. You could totally do it. I'm telling you.
That would be funny. Well, if someone wants to write a Seth MacFarlane spoof for me to voice act, I guess I can do that.
You can totally do that. You should definitely do that. Let's see here. All right.
Well, like a little voice acting, but like it's been a long time.
Yeah, you could pull it off. I'm telling you. I'm going to make a little fucking audio compilation out of this interview.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. But anyway, it's been fucking awesome. I'm going to give you a call later in the week. We'll discuss something. And final call
Sounds
for
good.
questions here for Jay.
Yeah, final call for questions. If anyone has any beer-related questions, music-related questions, anything but ass-wiping related questions.
Well, now you just alienated half the audience.
I think we alienated about a third of the audience.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, this was fun. Jay, I'll talk to you soon. Everyone have a good night. And if you're driving anywhere, be careful.
Yeah, please be careful out there. It's a crazy night. Joseph, thank you so much for having me. Thank you guys all for showing up here tonight. Don't forget that if you are around the Williamsport, Maryland area, or kind of in the Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland tri-state area, Black Metal Beach Party, my collaboration with Interchange Brewing, is still available, both in cans and on draft. It's our Pina Colada Triple IPA, 10.5%, and absolutely bombastic, awesome beer. So Joseph, thank you for giving me a chance to plug that. And for any of my friends that are going to be in Gothenburg, Stockholm, Karlstad, Vienna, Helsinki, or Lappeenranta, or Budapest, I will be in all of those cities all throughout March. Feel free to hit me up on my socials and let me know if you would like to meet up or have some beers or whatever while I'm out there. I'm always open for business inquiries. You can hit me up on Instagram at Slaughterbrew or info@slaughterbrew.com. Easiest ways to get in touch. I do all sorts of consulting, from marketing, networking, recipe design, helping you build a brand, start a brewery, whatever the case might be. And I charge pretty reasonable hourly rates on contracts. So easy enough to get a hold of me. Thank you guys again all for coming out. It's been a great evening. Hopefully your Super Bowl team won if you've been paying attention to the game. And Joseph, thank you again for having me out. It's always great to talk to you. Always a blast. I see you pointing up at something. What do we got?
Oh, no, someone brought me another Pilsner Urquell.
Oh, excellent. Pilsner Urquell is wonderful.
By the way, Taylor Swift won the Super Bowl. So,
So Deep State Biden endorsement won the Super Bowl. So now I'm going to have to hear about this on YouTube all month.
Yep. She's going to replace Kamala Harris as the next.
Honestly, she might be a better vice president if truth totally be told.
Good Lord. All right, everyone. Have a good night. Jay, I'll talk to you soon, man.
Cheers, everybody. Take care.
Sometimes the world no longer needs a hero. Sometimes what it needs is a monster. Sometimes the world no longer needs a hero. Sometimes what it needs is a monster.